All right, you guys ready? Good afternoon and welcome to the Talent Talk radio show. In case you are a first timer, welcome. For all of you that are returning, welcome as well. And as you may know, we love to have fantastic guests on this show who are uniquely talented individuals who are managing talent or thinking about talent and can help us be better employers, better managers, better leaders, or just better employees, maybe even. So this really is what the show is all about, to try to have a great conversation here on this podcast, here on this live show. We're also doing it on YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook. If you'd like to catch us live there as well, all those recordings, you can get us on video or just listen to us via the podcast and hopefully gain something that you can use in your own career in a positive way. I've had so many wonderful stories over the years from our fantastic guests. Put a lot of them in my first book, The Power of Company Culture. I put even more in the remote work book that we just did. Still a very timely topic. And as we're going to find out, our first guest is quite a traveler and used to, I'm sure, working remotely all the time. We are live every Tuesday, every 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, most of the time, although next week we're actually going to be on a funny time. But you can always catch us. Most of you get us. I think we get 10 or 12,000 downloads a day on the podcast, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Stitchers, Spotify, wherever you listen. Thank you. Make sure you subscribe and we can continue the conversation. We're also live tweeting the best bits of information, links to books and profiles and anything that maybe you would have wished you had written down. So if you are following along on Twitter at PeopleG2 or even on LinkedIn, we're doing it there as well. You can make sure not to miss anything. All right, my guest today will be Jeremie Kubicek, author and executive chairman of Giant. And then we'll bring in Paul Hargreaves. He's an author and Cotswold Fair CEO. We'll bring him into the second half of the show. But let's go ahead and bring in my first guest. Jeremie, welcome to the show today, sir.
Good to be with you. Thank you. Excited to be here.
So yeah, you mentioned you're on the road. You're used to being on the road, doing lots of speaking and lots of work. What's important for us to know about you, besides being an entrepreneur, a corporate thought leader, an acclaimed speaker, an author of several books? I know, including a bestseller, "Making Your Leadership Come Alive." You're an executive chairman. There's so much to know about you, but what's important for our conversation today?
Well, just on a personal level, I'm a guy, right? I'm a guy who is. I decided years ago to be intentional and not accidental. I've got 3 20-year-old kids, and my wife. We're empty nesters, and I have the best relationship with my kids because of what we did when they were in their junior high and high school years. So I don't know. That's just something that's unique. And I help them start companies too. So they all run companies, and I help them build and start businesses as a part of who we are.
Well, I love that idea about being intentional. And I think a lot of people try to be intentional with their teenagers. It doesn't always work out. So it'll be interesting to hear some of your advice there. But, not being accidental. I think so often people are afraid that they won't achieve anything, that they don't give themselves the opportunity just to see what might happen if they try. They're so worried that the ending won't be what they wanted or what they thought it was. I can't tell you how many times I've asked people, like, if you had a magic wand, what would you do? And the wish they give, you're like, you don't need magic for that. You could just go and do it. It's going to take hard work, but you got to do it. So, maybe what were the sort of first steps for you early on in your career? And you started off as in sort of a coaching career. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so I was living in Russia. I actually started a few companies in Russia in the early 90s, and it was a crazy time. And while I was there, I was around all these expats, and these expats had crazy lives. They'd moved there for money, and they just had a lot of issues. So I had a lot of American CEOs, and they started to actually, they heard about me, and I started informally coaching, meeting with them, being a sounding board, and I started to listen. And, just the power of listening. And then I started to offer perspective. And then I started to try to figure out metaphor to help them solve a problem. And so building that relationship actually was my first book, Making Your Leadership Come Alive, is the idea of where does influence happen? And I realized it's a combination of character and chemistry and competency and credibility. And the credibility started happening with word of mouth, but then they trusted me because of character. So it was this I was constantly going back and forth of character and competency and trying to figure out how to serve them. And that's how I started my coaching career, if you will, in 1993. And I've been building and serving, helping people coach ever since then.
Well, you're really in a unique environment. I've been to Russia many times, and I know it's not an easy place to do business.
Mm-hmm.
The rules are a little different than they are here.
Mm-hmm.
Some I think some ways better, some ways worse.
Yeah,
But it's just different, right?
it's
And
different.
yeah, and so it's really interesting to hear that you kind of started that off by just listening, and that's not necessarily something I think most leaders or type A's or people who are high achievers think about doing. It's like, well, you started to complain about something. Let me tell you the 5 ways you can fix it. Let me just fix it for you or tell you what to do. And that doesn't really help that person in the long run. And to your point of listening, you learn so much, right? As you're going along, you pick up so much that you can then translate into other conversations with other people. So how did you sort of take that and turn that into really being able to unlock potential in people?
Yeah, so it went on over time. I intuitively started to learn personality without even really knowing, and then you learn Myers-Briggs and DISC and some of the basics. And but then I realized that it's not; those aren't scalable. They're good, but they don't scale inside the organization. So what I started doing is started playing with the idea of the combination of emotional intelligence meets personality meets IQ. So how do you actually work in all of those with a person? And so we actually created a book called The Five Voices. The Five Voices is all taking Jungian typology and making it simple enough for a 13-year-old to get it. And so what happened is it's been basically a journey on adult learning. And I ended up buying John Maxwell's assets and held those for a number of years, started the Catalyst conferences, the Leader Cast. I had all these partnerships with thought leaders. And when it all boiled down, I realized that in 21st century learning terms, that most adults are cynical know-it-alls and they don't read anymore and they have attention issues. And when it came down to our phones being the primary driver of visual learning, then I realized micro learning had to change. So I took listening, which is fundamental, and started playing with these visual tools, because visual tools are like neurolinguistics. You start learning and tattooing ideas on your brain. And when you get a small little nugget of truth and it works for you and you pass it on to someone else and you teach it to someone, that's when you learn. So I've just been on this journey of micro learning. I've been on this journey of 21st century psychology mixed with the fundamentals that always work of listening and providing wisdom, right? So I've basically been working on building a toolkit and a complete platform and an operating system that works in the 21st century.
Well, I mean, you said a lot there, but
I did.
the know-it-alls that don't read, man, that is a big one. I can't. I've run big book clubs for years, and I can't tell you how many people. Oh, I'd love to be in a book club, but there's still a pretty small group of us that consistently meet and come. It's a lot of people
That's
who
right.
say they want to read the book, but do they really? And I've read a lot of books that I loved, and a lot of books that I thought, I could have skipped that one. But in every one, I learned something about
Yep.
myself, something about the world, something about other personalities. And it's just that it's almost like exercise, right? I mean, one workout routine isn't going to change your life, but you stack those together, right? You stack those learnings together as a leader, and it makes a big difference, right?
Yeah, but the problem is it's a little bit of a racket in the publishing world, because I know it fairly well that there's really Chapters 2, 3, or 4 are the hook of the book, and everything else is filler. So you, not in all books, and I would say in my books, I'm biased that they're dense all the way through. But in a lot of cases, that's the 20th century learning style. Butts and seats, read a book. Well, the 21st century, there's so much content that you actually have to learn how to apply the right tool. And so we just figured out that a visual tool can actually communicate an entire book in one visual. And once you get it and practice it, then you can apply it long term.
Yeah, and it's so important to be able to take that information and make it actionable, make it stick, and how do you keep that going? I mean, I've done trainings with people where I've said the only homework you have is to go back and just read your notes from today, just so you can try to remember some part of what you learned today. Because we forget so much. We consume a lot, but we forget even more. So I know you have this term, a 100x leader. What is that?
Yeah, 100x means 100% healthy and learning to multiply. X means multiplication. Most leaders that I run into and have worked with and seen, they're 75 plus at best. They're generally okay, generally healthy. And when I mean healthy, I mean emotionally, mentally, physically, the whole package. And then they add value to people, but I call them positively reactive, not positively proactive. And the idea is actually, it came from interviewing Sherpa on Mount Everest. And I spent time talking to the Sherpa, and I realized like the Sherpa have to be the healthiest people on the mountain. And you don't want to go up the mountain with an unhealthy Sherpa. Right. But the entire time I talked to climbers, and I've never climbed Mount Everest, but they would tell me like they were so good at training us and teaching us their tricks and their tips and here's how you do this, and you want to make sure of this. And so they were proactive. They're positively proactive. So most leaders are like, hey, yeah, Chris, good to see you. If you need anything, my door is always open. Meaning you come to me if you need anything. But the best leaders in the world are actually Sherpa. They know they want you to go. I want you to go here. So I'm going to fight for your highest possible good. And you trust me, and I'm for you, and I'm doing it for myself. I'm climbing. I want to help you climb. I'm performing. I want to help you perform. And that's the idea of 100X. It's actually an idea of bringing high support and high challenge and putting those together so that you become a leader that people want to follow, not have to follow. Because when you have to follow someone, you turn into compliance. But engagement only happens when you believe in the person that you're following.
Yeah, and if you can be, a fantastic leader, which I think a lot of people want to be, but, it's not something I would say one of the hardest things is that we learn how to be a leader from our parents in some ways, and our parents aren't necessarily great leaders. And even if they are somewhat effective, it's a lot of command and control, which it makes sense when you're 4. Don't jump in the fire; you're going to get burned. You know what I mean? Right. But it's not adult leadership; it's leadership for kids.
Yeah.
And then we have sports coaches, and again, it's sort of the same thing: do what I say, or go run laps, or do push-ups. We have teachers that are leaders with us, but again, most of that context we're children, and so it's a different atmosphere. And yet we take those lessons and we turn them into, well, I'm going to treat you just like my 6th grade teacher did, as a boss, because that's all I know. It's all I know how to do. And to your point, there's 1,000 books out there, but how do I read the right one or do the right thing and turn that into something I do? So it's go ahead.
And that's it. That's the premise of the 100X Leader book. It's basically, how do you become a 100? How do you become healthy? And then how do you learn how to multiply? And then how do you actually create a culture, atmosphere for your team to do that same thing? Because the pressure that I find, it's true. Everything you just said is true. Add to that the making of the donuts. Everyone has to make the donuts every day. When I mean donuts, I mean it's like the everyday work, busy work. And so people are so busy in making the donuts and doing their to-do lists and working and serving the client. It goes back to accidental. It's accidental leadership. It's accidental work. But when you flip the switch to become intentional, you proactively go, well, where do I want Chris to go? Well, Chris is here. And then you begin to call people up into who they are. their identity, who they are, and their superpowers, and you start training them. Like, yes, more of that. We need exactly, and you start giving them expectation and then clarity of their role, and all of a sudden, you become a person that people want to follow, not have to follow. But it's a journey, it's a process, and it's like a Sherpa mindset. You have to have this mindset that it's not just climbing, it's actually helping people climb. And that's why so many leaders are really poor. They don't want to be, but they didn't have the examples like you said, and they don't necessarily have the expectation of other people to know how to train them to do that. Because you have to, like, it's one thing to climb a mountain. It's another thing to take 5 people up the mountain climbing and helping them climb when they're whiny and their zipper's stuck in their coat or whatever the issue is, right? So it's like, that is leadership. Leadership is you have to perform and help others perform. And most people are great performers, then they get put into that leadership position and they're horrible.
Yeah, and they spend all their time learning how to be a great salesperson or a great customer service person or a great, technical person, whatever it may be. And then, now go manage these 50 people.
Well,
right?
Okay.
And we'll send you to 1 2-day seminar so you can learn how to be a
Yeah,
leader.
that's it.
Right.
Or read the book.
On.
If you just read, yeah.
Well, how do leaders then translate that into, creating invincible teams, coaching those types of invincible teams that you talk about? What does that look like?
Yeah. So it starts with you. If you're a leader and you're leading people, it starts with your mindset to go, okay, I'm responsible for myself and I'm responsible for these 5 people. Where do I want them to go? And then you start breaking it down. I need Susan to really do X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, let's ask the question. Does Susan know that you're for her, or does she believe that you're against her or for yourself? So is there positive intent? So building trust, right? So then they trust you. Well, if that's the case, yeah, Susan trusts me. Good. What do I need her to do? Well, I need her to do A, B, and C. Does she know your expectations? Have you clarified your expectations? Does she know how she wins? Do you know how she wins? Are you communicating that, right? So those dynamics are like really fundamentals of what do I want? When do I want that to happen? Does she know that I want that to happen? What does she need from me? What support does she need? And then what challenge can I have? What accountability are we going to have? But we're going to agree on that together. And it's just this over and over and over again where you're clearly defining objectives. And we tend to do them at Giant. We do them like 1 week at a time. Hey, here's what we want to get done this week. And so it's very fast, and you know if you're off or not. We're going to review it next quarter.
Right, and I love that kind of mindset. I think I've been a remote work advocate for a long time, and that is part of what I think is the important part of the good part of remote work is that you have to be so diligently clear. And you have to be able to tell someone, this is what I really need from you, because you're not going to be standing there watching people in a cubicle farm to see if they're doing it or not, right? And you're not just going to walk by their desk and then have a moment to say, oh, well, you're doing it the way I thought you should do it. No, you have to be so clear and then let them go off and go do it and then come back to you. And then you can make adjustments, or we can change strategy, we can pivot. But you can't just be sloppy and messy like we used to be able to.
Well, and the problem is most of us have come from 2 different camps. You said the football coach, or that parent who's high challenge, no support. So it's like, come on, Chris, get your act together. Do you know how many people want your job? And that is fear. Mm-hmm. And that's lighting a fire under someone. And I always tell people, when you light a fire under someone, guess who gets worn out? Everybody. You get worn out, they get worn out. But they just move to another chair. They don't necessarily go in the direction that you want them to go. On the other end, if you bring all support and kumbaya and never bring appropriate challenge, then there's a lot of hinting. Hey, Chris, big week next week. You ready? Yeah. Are you good? Right. And then that's like,
yes, but to what?
Yeah. And so there's these expectations that are out there, but nobody shared them. And that's where this we call it, it's liberation. Liberating people is empowering them. It's like, hey, I'm fighting for your highest possible good. So Chris, here's what we need. We want to do this. What do you need helping to do that? And I think we can get it done by this time. Do you agree? Right. Awesome. Let's do it.
Right.
So now we've agreed to expectation.
Simple, but yet not always present, not always easy. That people don't think about it. So, Jeremie, we're almost out of time here. I want to make sure before we go, I ask you the most important question, and that is, how can people find out more about you? How can they learn more about you? What sites or places should they go to? Obviously, I'm assuming they can go to Amazon and find you in your books, but what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to giantcoach.com/talenttalk, we actually have a whole landing page set up for your listeners.
Awesome.
And when they go there, if they want to learn their personality, they go to the five voices and take their 5 voices assessment. If they want to look at certification and how to do it, we've made it so low cost for people to do certifications. So that's it. giantcoach.com/talenttalk.
We'll make sure to get that link out to our listeners and all the different social platforms. Angela on my side will take care of that. But I really enjoyed talking to you today, and hopefully we can have you come back at some point, and we'll keep the conversation going. And I know there's a lot more to learn from you and everything that you're doing. But thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you.
All right, we're right back with my second guest, Paul Hargraves.
All right, guys.
Imagine buying a newspaper and discovering that the news you're reading is 6 months old. There isn't much that stays the same for 6 months. And the same thing goes for background checks. In a time when so much outdated information is being passed around, it's good to know that People G2 offers something different. At People G2, we provide today's intelligence, not yesterday's news. Our value-added approach offers you a fully FCRA-compliant solution that includes up to the...
Can you hear me, Paul?
Yes, I can.
There we go. We're having some sort of technical problem. It's making the commercials sound like it's being blared from a megaphone. So my apologies. We'll get going here in just a second.
What the problem is Zoom has changed the settings.
Yeah, Paul, we can barely hear you. So I think it's better if we just cut the commercial. We'll give a moment of silence, and then we can just pick up.
Okay.
All right, we ready? All right, here we go. Welcome back to the Talent Talk Radio Show. In case you missed my first guest, you can listen to Jeremie's interview on our podcast on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you find it, you can listen. But you can also watch it because we have a live broadcast that went out onto YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So you want to watch us, you want to listen to us, we are there. Make sure you subscribe, comment, let us know what you're thinking, and we can keep the conversation going. My next guest is Paul Hargraves, the CEO and founder of Cotswold. Is it Fair? Am I saying that right?
It's Fair, yeah, Cotswold Fair, yeah.
Fair, all right, close enough. Speaker and a B Corp ambassador. In his book, The Fourth Bottom Line, he talks about the rise of compassionate, loving leaders and how they can help nurture and engage talent. Don't forget, we are live tweeting right now, so follow at PeopleG2 or that hashtag TalentTalk. We will put out all the best links, profiles, all that information will be there. But Paul, welcome to the show today. How are you?
Good to be here, Chris. It's very dark here and about 8 hours later than you. So yeah. Probably the latest interview I've ever done. Actually, it's nearly 10
the
o'clock.
latest. All right. Well, for everyone that may not know, where is here? Where are you calling in from?
Oh, I'm in the UK.
Okay. So in the UK, which is great, we've had lots of people across the pond be on the show, but we appreciate you staying up late for us. Hopefully we're not keeping you from your nightcap. But why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself? What's important for us to know in our conversation here today?
So just brief outline of the business. We're a wholesale food and drink company, supplying specialty food to about 2,000 retailers in the UK. That's the main business. And then this year we also started our own food hall and restaurant, basically became one of our own customers, if you like. So that's an outline of what we do. We've got about 110 staff, and we've been going for 20 years.
Wow. Wow. So I know it's I always feel like the UK food business is so unique and specific, whereas the United States, you kind of have this very regionalness, and can be very different. I feel like I understand when I go to England, it's like I can go to a Market Spencer, I can go to these certain places, and you feel like you know exactly what you're going to get, which much like Japan in that way too. You have certain outlets and things like that. So it sounds like you're kind of in that world.
Yeah, and we primarily do British products, but we do bring stuff in from Japan and the USA, actually.
Yeah, yeah. So how does that translate into, you have 110 people, you've been in business for 20 years. How does that sort of translate into you, I guess figuring out some of these business lessons, maybe we could start with where do you think business leadership has gone wrong over the years? I'm sure you've seen a lot of different things. Certainly with the book, you may have some good ideas on what to do, but where have you kind of seen us go wrong, during that time?
Well, I think, over the years, over probably the past 250 years at least, business has really, in my, what I've read in history and what I've seen in my lifetime, business has been more about taking stuff from people and from the planet. And it's been about extraction. It's about squeezing as much as possible as we can get out of the people we've got working for us, our suppliers, and probably more recently, extracting stuff from the earth. And it's been damaging, really, to put it bluntly. And that's the mess we're in now. We've got a world that's more unequal than ever before, and we've got a planet that's well known to be degrading at a ever rapidly increasing rate. So we're in a mess. It's probably not all business's fault, but a lot of it can be at the door of business's blame, I'm afraid.
It always seems like, the problem is just far enough away, whether you're talking about the environment or you're talking about how we treat our employees or we're talking about sustainable business practices. The problem is just far enough away that, if we just keep being not quite good, it's not really going to impact us in this generation. Maybe I as the boss or I as the consumer or whatever, maybe it won't quite impact me.
No.
Right.
And so I think we're insulated, aren't we? And certainly in Western cities, our rubbish gets taken away and dumped somewhere else. We don't see the damage that the carbon's doing to some, low-lying other parts of the world. And it's like we've lost that connectivity with other people and with nature. And I've been lucky enough to travel to Asia and Africa quite a bit, and there people are much more in contact with each other, with their community, and with the planet itself. And I think we've lost a lot by disconnecting ourselves from each other and from our planet that we live on.
So how is your leadership? How is your company kind of tried to behave differently than, over its tenure?
Well, I'm not saying we're perfect, of course, but we try and there's a phrase now, isn't there, that called giving something back. Well, my view on that is don't take it in the first place. So we try and be generous. We're generous to our people, and we're doing what we can to be generous to the planet as well. So in a way, being the opposite of what business has done in the past. And as I said, we got a hell of a long way to go. But if we can, every day when we leave work, if we can leave the people of the world and the planet in a slightly better place than it was when we rocked up to work in the morning, then obviously that's a good thing to do. But actually, there's a lot more fulfillment and satisfaction there, both for me and the people that work for us. And I think increasingly, certainly during COVID, I think a lot's changed, and people don't just want to go to work to pay the mortgage or rent. Of course they need to do that, obviously, but if they can go to work and actually make a positive difference to the world, more and more people actually want to do that. So that's where we're managing to recruit some great people at the moment, because that's what we stand for, and people would choose to work for us than a company that maybe isn't doing quite as much for the earth as we are.
Yeah, and I think it's I liked your thought about not taking to begin with. I saw an interview a while back with Bill Gates, and he talked to, they were sort of asking him about, look, your carbon footprint is ridiculous, and you're out here advocating for environmental practices. And he said, yeah, well, I spend $7 million basically giving back, like basically reducing what I already took. So, right. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. But like the average person can't do that, right? We can't go spend $7 million to reduce carbon in one area to make up for the fact that we've taken this many flights all year. So it has to be that kind of balance, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe what are some of the best ways that you have found to really help maximize the talent inside of your business?
Well, I think a big one is trusting people. If you've got the right people working for you, you can trust them, you can give them loads of responsibility. And certainly the good people love that anyway. I see quite often in other businesses, maybe some of our suppliers who should remain nameless, but the leaders of those businesses are trying to hold on too much and maintain control. And I think that's probably another thing that COVID taught some people. Everyone ended up working at home, and it forced people in a way to trust the people that work for them. And sure enough, they realized they were trustworthy. They actually did more work sitting at home than they did when they came to the office. So it's something we've always done. I think more people probably do trust their employees these days. But I think if you've got the right people, more and more responsibility, and let them make decisions. And they will fail from time to time. They will make mistakes, but let them make mistakes.
That's sort of that thought process, right? Like I think a lot of people didn't trust their employees, but they were like, we don't have a choice. So we send them home, and then they went, oh, this worked, and they did a great job. And maybe I'm sure there was some exceptions. I'm sure there was nothing was 100%, but for the most part, people did a really great job, and they were working more because they were either bored or not sitting in traffic or on in the tube or whatever. They weren't having to go around public transportation. And so we saw a betterment of it. And I think that's a really interesting business model, because we've thought about, what if we had to do this thing, right? What if we had to pivot? We had to do, what would we do then, right? Because then you don't have to worry about, well, what are the pros and cons? It's, if you have to do it, if we have to double in business, if we have to change what we're going to do tomorrow, if the government decides what we're selling is not legal anymore, what will we do instead? Yeah. Right? Then what do you do? And that's a different way of thinking for people. I think that maybe only a few strategic leaders ever really think about.
Yeah, we've had the technology to do video meetings for decades, more than a decade anyway. Yeah, it's not really happened because people wanted the control of having their people in the office. So it's forced us to do the right thing. You're right.
Yeah. I will say, if it was 5 to 10 years ago, I'm not sure that the Zoom thing would have gone as well as it did. It might have been a lot of phone calls, because I remember the video quality was really bad. I mean, we were quite lucky that the bandwidths really have gotten improved.
Well, you say that, but try being in the house with a wife working from home, 2 daughters back from university, all 4 of us trying to be online at the same time. That didn't work terribly well either.
So I'll tell you, we actually had to deal with that with a lot of our staff and the people I consult with, and we had to send Wi-Fi hotspots, to people. We had to give them flexibility on when they did their work, so that they weren't on the same time as their spouse and their kids, right? So they could change that around. And there was some things we had to juggle a little bit. That was for sure. Yeah.
My wife was at an important meeting to a supermarket in the UK, and I managed to ruin her meeting by having my own meeting. Wasn't very popular.
Well, I'm curious how you would describe your company culture, and maybe give some context, maybe pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. What does that look like? Do you have 110 people out in the field? Are they all in an office? What does that look like? And how would you describe that culture?
In the wholesale business, a lot of them are in the office. And then obviously the retail and hospitality side, they have to be at work. The sales team have always been remote. There's a guy actually started with us soon after COVID. And this I think sums that up for me. It really pleased me when he said this one day. He said, after about 6 months of working for us, been on quite a few meetings with me and with other members of the team, and he said, Paul, I've just realised I haven't been in a meeting at any point during my 6 months at Cotswold Fair when there hasn't been laughter. And I thought, yes. Look, if you can't have fun while you're at work, then let's not get out of bed in the morning. Yes, we work hard. Of course we do. Everyone does. But we try and make work fun and not a chore that you have to get through, or not something, I look forward to my next holiday, then I can actually enjoy myself. Let's enjoy ourselves now, 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, whatever you work. And obviously people are going to be happier, more satisfied. They'll probably work harder and the company will probably be more successful. So have fun and get it done is one of our values. And it's definitely the one that we probably stick to most.
Yeah, and I think that's really important for leaders and for companies to decide what it is that they think is important for the meetings, right? I mean, meetings to me are the microscope or the glimpse into the soul of the company. And it doesn't, you might say, well, laughter isn't what we would value in this company, but it would be in that company. That's fine. I don't care what the value is. I know for my company, respecting people's time and keeping meetings to be as efficient and time focused as possible is the most important thing to them, right? We like to laugh, we like to have a good time, but they want to come in and come out because they have so much to do and they have so many competing things going on that if a meeting can be 8 minutes long instead of an hour or 30 minutes, like that inside of my organization, that's the most important thing to them because they don't want to waste time and they'd rather spend that time with their family or doing something else, right? So defining what's important for your people and then finding ways to expand upon that and make that true. And for you guys, it sounds like having laughter in your meetings is super important and probably better than anything else you could do from giving out bonuses or wellness or, gift cards for what, I mean, that's more valuable.
We do all that as well, of course, right. But yeah. But also for the customers, if you're having a meeting, as you have to do with various suppliers, if they can have more, enjoyment in the meeting with you, where are they going to prefer to have the next meeting? Is with you rather than your maybe slightly boring competitor, isn't it?
Right. It is important, and it's having that personality come out, and I think people like to work with people they like. This is. It's sales 101, right? This is customer service 101. I mean,
we've lost a lot of aspects of community, I think, in our Western world. But I think business and relationships. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Business equals relationships, and vice versa. So that is an aspect of community that's really, really important for successful business.
We used to be very, very focused on, hey, we wanted to get on the phone with people. We wanted to talk to them and really have that connection because we thought we were really being, the ultimate in customer service. And what we realized was, though, generationally, that was changing. And we had a lot of people that did not want to be on the phone, right? And what they wanted was high focus, the same kind of relationship, but on a ticket, right? Or in a chat. They wanted it in a written form, much like they would on their phones and text. And so even though that wasn't really how we wanted to proceed, we made the switch for people. We provide both, but all of a sudden customer satisfaction scores started going through the roof just because we gave them what they wanted, right? Not what we wanted as a medium to have that communication and have that interaction with them. So yeah. Well, what are you doing now? I mean, this is, I don't know how reflective this is in the UK, but certainly in the US, we're, talent shortage. We're having the Great Resignation right now, where, everyone is looking for talent. Everyone is hiring. They're checking. I think we're about to excavate some people from graves and stand them up at the register to fill some positions. What is it like on your end? I mean, how are you finding the best talent for your company?
Well, we haven't actually had a problem attracting it, and I'll tell you why. We used to be, we've always done stuff, good stuff for the world, community, things done a lot for our people. We didn't really talk about it that much for many years. And we've got a project in Kenya and in Africa, and a number of us go out there every year where possible. Obviously, haven't been the last 2 years, but we haven't really shouted about that. But of the last 3-4 years, we have started talking about it more. And the reason was customers and suppliers were saying to us, you need to talk about this stuff. It's important. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to talk about it because you don't want to be seen to be doing good things just for a PR stunt. So that wasn't why we were doing it anyway. So we have talked about it more. We produce an impact report every year, which basically tells the world what we're doing, both from the business side, but also the community, planet, people stuff. And I think putting ourselves out there as well as increasingly people, as I said before, people wanting to work for some organization that's making a difference in the world, has actually massively helped us attract good people to us in this last year. I mean, we've got a restaurant. Chefs are really difficult to recruit at the moment in the UK. We have currently a full house of chefs. No one else has, because we're basically a better company to work for. Plus the fact we don't open in the evenings, that makes it easier for people with families and stuff. But right. Yeah, I do think there's been a big shift, and people say it's Gen Y, Gen Z are the people wanting to work for companies like that. Yes, it is, but it's also some older people as well. They want to make a difference, I think, more than ever in the last few years. So I'm not saying it's always going to be easy, but I think we're putting ourselves in a better place to get good people on board.
Well, Paul, really enjoyed learning more about Cotswold Fair and and I think having on the show has been really enlightening to really talk about how do we really focus on our people, how do we develop our culture, how do we really develop what's important. And a lot of that sounds like it comes from you, it comes from what you think is important, but really helping drive that inside the organization. And hopefully the listeners can take some of that home with them and deliver it to their people, to their companies. If they're in the UK, I am assuming that would be the best place or the best set of people to find out more. If someone's interested in knowing more about you or possibly about a career with your company, where should they go and look for you and to do that?
Well, my best place to contact me is my website, paulhargreaves.co.uk, and drop me an email there. The books, Forces for Good and The Fourth Bottom Line, you'll find details there of where to buy them as well. But I'll put you in contact with the right recruitment person if you're looking for a job, for sure.
Well, fantastic. Thanks again so much for being a part of the show and for staying up so late. We appreciate you making us your latest interview ever.
Thanks. Always a pleasure. Don't worry about that.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to today's show. Hopefully you've gained something you can use in your own career in a positive way. Until next time, do what you love and show the world how talented you can be today. And we're done.